Things are starting to feel suspiciously tame on Survivor 48 right now. I mean, people are still out there playing really hard, but it kind of feels like most of the drama is long gone, although I'm really hoping that's not the case. Even though things are looking kind of stagnant right now, there is still a lot of stuff to talk about from this episode, including some possible hints to who the winner might be, so stay tuned. And of course, if you have not already, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button below so that you can stay tuned as we wrap up this season. Now, let's get started. So pretty much all the drama in this episode revolves around the one and only alliance in the game. Surprise, surprise. And as we progress through this episode, we're pretty much just going to see this majority fall apart at the seams. Which, now that I think about it, was probably Kyle and Kamilla's plan all along. See, last episode, we saw David trying his best to get Kamilla out, which, if we're being honest, was a pretty solid move from his standpoint. But of course, Kyle wasn't having none of that, so now they're kind of at a standstill. So now in this alliance, we pretty much have David with now randomly Mary on one side, and we have Kyle and Shauhin on the other. This, of course, is going to leave Joe and Eva stuck in the middle, and as we see, they're going to have some very difficult decisions to make as this episode progresses. Now, again, David is low-key right to be paranoid about Kamilla because she is a good-ass player. She was able to successfully manipulate him. She eats down, and she does have secret alliances sprinkled about here and there. But David's main issue seems to be that he's not able to really articulate any of this to his tribe, and instead he kind of just comes across as douchey when he talks sometimes. And all those muscles and stuff are not helping his case at all, sorry. So throughout this episode, as we see him trying again and again to push against Kyle and Shauhin, all of this is just going to turn around and make him look more untrustworthy. On a personal note, I'm just more on Kyle and Kamilla's side in this whole thing anyway. I can't really help it. I've just been drawn to both of their styles of gameplay from the very beginning of the season. So throughout this whole episode, I am rooting for them a little bit more, and I think the show is too, because they do David pretty dirty in this edit. Like, they are just throwing a lot of subtle shade at him here and there throughout this whole episode and the last one. Really. Later on that night, we see Eva sneak off away from everybody else to go try to earn her advantage. And as we see, Survivor ends up doing that thing that it just loves to do in the new era nowadays, where they give the players this new mini game, but then they add all these complicated layers of risk and reward on top in order to make the episode more interesting, I guess. And I'm sure that as a contestant, this is a very fun way to play Survivor, right? I'm sure it's very thrilling to figure out which mini game you're going to get and all that. But we've just seen this same formula over and over this new era that at this point it's just so stale. The games are never fun. It's always boring television to watch. And again, it takes away all this precious airtime that could be dedicated to camp life or personal stories or whatever the hell else. I would just personally rather watch a less complicated game overall, but hey, Eva has safety without power now, so hey, that's good for her. She also has that public idol that everybody knows about, which for whatever reason hasn't made her a target yet, but I'm sure that day is gonna come sooner rather than later. Now, what I thought was really interesting here is how the edit portrays Eva telling her alliance about these advantages. We see that Shauhin and Joe both caught her sneaking away, but since Joe has so much blind faith and trust in Eva, he's just not worried about it at all. And what was really telling for me is that later on, when Eva goes to reveal all of this to her tribe, it's really told from Joe's perspective and not Eva's.
I am not worried about Eva. I wasn't going to ask her. I wasn't going to approach her. I feel that confident. And what happened? First thing in the morning, she's like, all right, here's what I got. So I felt good.
We don't get a single confessional from Eva about why she chose to reveal this and not keep it a secret. But instead, we hear Joe and Shauhin too talk about why they trust Eva so much. It just seems like it's more about Joe and Shauhin than Eva from an editing standpoint only, which I just don't think is very good for her winner outlook, unfortunately. And I kind of feel the same way about that scene between Joe and Kyle. We hear Kyle opening up and telling Joe about his backstory and about how he got into some trouble when he was growing up. And I'm glad that we're finally hearing all this stuff about who Kyle is as a person and all that. But it also seemed like this scene was really mainly about Joe. It's really mainly about how Joe was seen as a good friend and a good confidant, and really painting him in this angelic sort of light. And it was after this scene right here that I am so completely sure that by the end of this episode, Joe is gonna end up choosing Kyle's sides over David's. So with all this drama in the air, the players are then going to head off to their next challenge, which is yet another endurance comp. And just like a few weeks ago, this one is going to come down between Joe and David yet again. Last time we know that David came out on top, and for a second there, it looked like he was about to whoop Joe's ass again, not gonna lie. But out of nowhere, he loses focus and slips, giving Joe yet another immunity. Back at camp, we see David and Mary tossing out a few names, trying to see what they can make stick. They say they don't want to go after Kamilla anymore because they're afraid that Shauhin may use his idol on her. And at first, I was just like so confused as to what David was talking about. Like, I didn't know if he pulled this out his ass or what. But then I remembered a few episodes back when Kamilla planted that scene that Shauhin had an idol just to get him out. I loved how that whole moment just came around full circle in order to sort of save Kamilla now, even though I did think it was weird that they didn't give us like a flashback to that part or anything like that. So now David is seemingly continuing to just dig himself a hole with this paranoia, and all of this just seems to be pushing Joe and Eva way more. So with everything just being set up the way it was in this episode, heading into Tribal, I had a pretty good feeling of who was about to be voted out here. This Tribal Council itself ends up being nothing spectacular. I mean, there's a little bit of a tussle between Kamilla and David here, but other than that, it's pretty boring as shit. I just feel like we get the same formulaic questions and metaphors with every single Tribal Council these days, but I'm not even going to get into all that. I feel like I've already exhausted all of my complaints for this episode, so let's just leave that there. We eventually get to the votes where we see that every single person in David's alliance chooses to flip and vote him out here, which has got to suck. Even like his precious Eva, which I know he wasn't expecting. Again, this wasn't really surprising to me, an audience member, just based on what we've seen the past couple episodes. But it definitely shook David, who was the main one out there teaching all that honesty and integrity crap. Now that there are only 8 people left standing, I really feel like Joe, Shauhin, and maybe Kyle are in the best spots to win right now. Joe just has seemingly had all of this love and social power given to him since the very beginning of the game. And despite him being probably the biggest threat out there, it really doesn't look like anybody's been saying his name. But at the same time, Shauhin did get that great flashback of him planting all these seeds and manipulating people in this episode, which I thought was really awesome. So he's definitely in the running too, but I also feel like this whole season I felt like Shauhin has just been one step behind Joe, just by a little bit. I don't feel as strongly about Kyle winning, but I also don't want to count him out completely because I feel like we've gotten a full story from him based both on his personal life and strategic gameplay. And he's also made a lot of win-worthy moves too, so I just don't know. This is a hard one to dissect, y'all. Mitch also has a really weird edit to me because we keep getting all this personal content from him in damn near every single episode, despite him not really being that important to the main storyline. Like in this episode, we get a camp life scene of him teaching Star how to swim, and even though Star is the one learning, like she should be the main focus, right? But this scene is told from Mitch's point of view. Plus, I feel like we've heard all season long the other contestants talk about what a big threat Mitch is, despite him not looking threatening at all to me. And they did a similar edit with Erica during her season, which is the only reason why I'm on my toes. But other than that, I don't really see anything for Mitch. Of course, I want to know, who do you think is going to win this whole thing? If you have a top 3, let me know in the comments below. If the next episode is an interesting one, and I'm really hoping it will be, then I can see people finally starting to come for Eva. I just feel like that would be a logical step since she has all of this public power and she has a lot of allies. But if it's a boring episode, then the majority will continue to rise and we're going to see Star, Mary, or Mitch leave, which I would personally hate. So fingers crossed it's not that. Of course, I'll be here next week to recap the next episode with you all. But until then, bye.